see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Unites people. Armies, gold, flags, stories. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it.
If you want to stand out from everybody else, you need to get into storytelling.
Draw a different frame around the same set of circumstances and new pathways come into view.
Welcome to ARTEFACTLive with me, Scott McArthur, where we look at the art and science of story. We don't care who you are, whether you're a bricklayer, a professor or a speaker, all we care about is you being a good storyteller.
Thank God the dramas arrived.
It's time to realise that facts tell, but it's stories that sell.
Get me some nasty and get it now or someone's getting shot.
And that's a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. 1,000 comments.
Selling a hemorrhoid cream to someone who's got hemorrhoids.
Got a whip.
I was born into a deep contradiction.
This stuff's magic.
God, that's so clever.
Ha! It's funny hearing that music again.
Yeah. This is really good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recognise the voices as to who's who. And,
You probably know some of them.
I probably do.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hiya, I'm fine. I've got a huge smile on my face, mate. We were speaking beforehand. You could tell I was on a bit of a trip here because it's been about 7 or 8 weeks since season 1 ended. So welcome to ARTEFACTLive.
Welcome indeed.
Yeah. My name's Scott McArthur.
And I'm Paul Crick.
And we're here to continue a story that is now 72 episodes long, Paul, believe it or not. That's how many we've done now.
Wow.
72 episodes. We must try and get it right one of these days.
It's all good practice.
Yeah, I know. And it's been quite interesting. I don't know what you've been up to for the last 8 weeks then. How's it been? How's it been?
Summer was great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Lionesses win. That seems a long time ago, but
What sport was that? What was that?
Steady, you'll be in
Lioness.
trouble.
England?
No. Well, I must admit, the comments that flew around Facebook made me smile because it said, "See, if you want a job doing, ask a woman."
Hurrah to that.
Yeah, I thoroughly appreciate it. No, it's been really good. Plowing ahead with the Elevate partnership and keep going with that. So enjoying the work, traveling a little bit as well. So being over to
I saw you were over. Was it Holland you were in? What was that?
No, I was over in Germany. We had
Germany,
a summer gathering that turned out to be one of the best events I've been to in a very, very long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, we need to tell you.
I'm talking decades.
Maybe we need to capture that on an episode actually, because it did sound jolly good actually.
Well, we ought to get Johannes and Sarah from Leadership Circle on. I'm sure they'd come and talk to us. They're great fun and very knowledgeable folks. So I will ask them if you're up for it.
Yeah, well up for it.
Okay,
for it.
good.
It looked fantastic. Well, my break, if you like, has been a bit like suspect that similar to yours. It's been a bit of a curate's egg because there's been some recovery in the speaking circuit, which has been welcomed. And I was over in Vilnius, as you're meant to say it, apparently, in Lithuania just last week. And I spoke there to 1,300 96% women HR professionals. And it was great. I mean, I got such a boost from it. Honestly,
Good.
It was amazing. Been back in the room and getting that energy again. So it was great. But other things. I did a stint at Oxford as a lecturer there for a month, which was
How was that?
Well, it was great and it was disappointing at the same time, because it was so cool working with, and it sounds quite trite, but working with young minds, you know, for 4 weeks from all over the world, literally from everywhere. That was amazing. But the quality of the administration and the standards were not what I expected, if I'm honest. Maybe I've just got high expectations because it's Oxford, but yeah, it was good. It's good to do, and I'm pleased I did it. And if they ask me again, which I think they have already, I'll do it again. But
Great.
Yeah, it was great working with the young. Oh, what a boost I got! See, by the end of the 4 weeks, it was like, I want to do more of this, you know. So that was exciting. But
yeah, teaching's fun. Teaching's fun.
yeah,
Very much.
it's a privilege, and I don't mean that in a sort of wanky sort of way. I really mean it. I mean, it's a terrific privilege to do it. So. And I so admire teachers. I don't know how they do it every week, to be honest. I think it would kill me. But wow, what an experience. Anyway, so this week, what are we up to this week? Who are we speaking to this week?
We are speaking to a good friend of mine, Bree Luther. Bree is from the States, as you'll be able to tell from her accent. And she's a coach, and she's... what is she? She is a polymath and is involved in health and well-being and applies that into coaching. She's a member of Forbes Coaching Council. She's been doing it for years and just has this outlook on life that I just wanted to bring over here and introduce to this audience. Because I think she's got a lot of good stuff to say that needs to be heard, and it isn't necessarily the usual stuff that you might expect.
Yeah, I can't wait to let everyone hear the sort of her favorite artifact part, because that's really wonderful.
It was unusual. I actually had to pause in the interview and say, "What did you say?" Showing my ignorance.
Yes,
it's a beautiful item. So
yes,
it's great. It's probably worth saying before we sort of shoot at the outset that. I never know how to phrase this, but the conversation talks about suicide, and therefore, if anybody is concerned that they'll be triggered, or if there's anybody, if it will upset anyone, we just want to let people know in advance that there is part of the conversation that does talk about that. I think it's an important part of the conversation, but if it's likely to upset you, then that's okay. We understand, and you might want to maybe wait to the next episode after this one.
Fine, thank you for that. And this is an audio only show this week, isn't it? So
it is, yes. The joys of technology and the things that never run anything that says automatically does X, Y, Z, because it will, and it'll surprise you, and you kind of go, where did that go? And you go, and then you're searching and you're doing all sorts of things. You're going, oh, I've only got the audio file.
Yeah.
So well, I think I'm sorry.
So, fortunately, certainly for the LinkedIn audience, there should be automatically subs on it as well, just in case they're watching it. So I've queued that up. So let's get Bree on. And what we'll do, Paul, if there's a bit that you want me to stop, just wave at me, because I can see you off cam anyway. I can see you in the grey box. Or I'll stop it if we want to stop and have a quick chat, because there's a lot of content here. It's about 45 minutes long, so it's a good length. But that doesn't stop us having a chat at the same time. And we'll certainly come back at the end and reflect on what Bree's got to say.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. She's a very smart lady. So I hope you enjoy it.
It's so good because it's a while since, I know we've sort of spoken leading up to the show, but it's a while since we first connected. Perhaps the first place to start is, tell us a little bit about your own story, about how you got to where you are now, because I think there are some fascinating twists and turns in it.
Yeah, you're so kind to ask me, Paul. Thank you. In part, what brought me here today is you. I did meet you some years ago, and I'm quite thrilled after listening to episodes that you and Scott have produced, this concept of story stewardship and really getting below the waterline, so to speak, of just what we'll see on a resume or LinkedIn or what, the marketing vehicles. So I think really honestly what got me here today, there's this Japanese saying, Okage-sama. Are you familiar with it?
No, what does that mean?
So Okage-sama, and a dear friend of mine who's an acupuncturist, he actually used to be Jerry Rice and Joe Montana's acupuncturist when he when they, during the Super Bowl run. But I had learned this from him, and Okage-sama it's basically a spiral. So as you look back, it's basically giving gratitude for all the challenges, all of the people that have brought you to this very moment. And, not too dissimilar to you, I have so many stories. It's challenging to know which one to bring forward.
Well, I think we all get to a point in life where the spiral gets longer and longer somehow. But what I find fascinating is, and I don't know if it's the same for you, is that when we look back, the narrative changes, particularly if we allow it to change. There's people I know that I've known for years, and every time I meet them, they tell you the same story. And there's other people I know, like you, where I've met them, and the story has shifted ever so slightly. And then over a period of time, it's kind of like, well, that used to be the story, but the story's this.
I think that is a really interesting point. I was thinking about that this morning, that very thing, on my walk this morning. And I know most people are familiar with the term PTSD, or post-traumatic distress. But what I think people aren't familiar with is post-traumatic growth. That the very lines at which something challenging or very traumatic has happened is also an opportunity where we can become aware and conscious of that, cultivate the emotions around it. I mean, I know I lost both my mom and dad over the last 2 years, so that honoring that grief walk and moving into that grief, and according to, especially in a Tibetan or Buddhist tradition, no mud, no lotus. So the very ground that we're cultivating in grief or sorrow or those emotions is the counter of that, pairs of opposites, so to speak. So it's the joy, it's the happiness. We gain understanding, and then we can forgive. We can see the binary bias. So we can choose at any moment, as you say, to really be with our stories and steward them. I love this. I learned this actually from some beautiful board members over at the ICCR. This term, I'm sure it's shown up in other places.
What's the ICCR for our listeners?
Okay, the ICCR is the Interfaith Center of Corporate Responsibility. I think you can find them at iccr.org. And I had the pleasure of meeting the board at the beginning of the year, and it just opened my heart of what they were up to, both individually or as leaders in their own companies and in this big tent organization.
I think it's always encouraging to hear stories like that, because for all the doom and gloom that the media chooses to focus on, what I find is for every one story of doom and gloom, if we're prepared to look a little further, there's usually 10 to 20 stories of other great works and great people really expanding and trying to change the color of the lens that we choose to view the world through. Do you find that to be the same too in your experience?
See, this is why I love talking with you, Paul, because we're speaking the same language. So that exact thing, if we're looking for the doom and gloom, that's what will show up. And if we're looking for the goodness, that can show up as well. And my heart opened recently for two reasons. Well, for a number of reasons, including that one of my mentors gifted me an acre of land from an organization you may know, because I think it's over in your side of the woods.
Okay.
It's the World Land Trust.
I think I've heard of it vaguely. I will go and search it out
Right.
after our conversation. But okay, tell me more about that.
And there's something I might not have all the details exactly, but basically, I guess the science is that when you buy an acre of land, it offsets the carbon footprint.
Okay.
For many, many years, for a number of people. So just buying up a land, and then it also helps from a species preservation standpoint. So that's one example. And then another organization, recently I sponsored a young woman down in Ecuador. She's 7 years old. for $35 a month, and now she can go to school, have immunization. So there's things that we can do. You know, the problems seem so large out there, and they are. But if we bring it back to what's meaningful to us and connect to our values, there are so many great organizations doing good work in the world, and we can be a part of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So we met when I was at IBM, and you were kind enough to come and talk to us, the coaching community of practice we were building there, because you're very well established as a highly sought after coach. Tell us a little bit about your story of how you got there and what made you choose to go in that direction.
Well, it was certainly a journey, and I think it was a journey I was just listening to one step at a time. So let's see. I had the blessing and the honor of having some managers and colleagues that I had worked for over at Oracle Corporation and some other companies basically reflect to me that even from the beginning I was a coach. And so I was encouraged by those senior leaders to go get the training. And they had also shared, it was back when, let's see, I'm looking at the exact date. I finally got into the program in 2006 at the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And quite honestly, I didn't even know how I was going to get into this graduate program, because I had a very non-traditional both education and career. I guess I've heard someone refer to it as a zigzag recently.
So tell us about that. What made it a zigzag?
You're good at drawing me out. So I was an engineering student at the University of Florida, and my brother had passed away. He was 3 years older than me. It was a pretty traumatic event. And a girlfriend of mine invited me. She lived on the Strand down in Los Angeles, and she invited me to come down and take a break. It was the summer. Well, it turned out her next door neighbor was Mark Benioff, and I didn't know Oracle Corporation at the time. I didn't know who Mark Benioff was at the time. Of course, he was young at the time too. So my friend was friends with him, and so we were hanging out over the summer and really got to know each other. And Mark offered me a job. I mean, I was at a crossroads of going back and finishing my engineering degree, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And the next thing I knew, I was fast-tracked into Oracle from 1988 to 1998, and it was just a tremendous time. I mean, I had so many great opportunities at that company to work with just great leaders. And so one of them actually who passed away recently, his name's John Kish, and I'm still friends with his beautiful wife, Marie Kish. I was working for him, and he was heading up desktop products and some other programs for Larry Ellison, and he encouraged me to move outside of what I was doing because he saw an aptitude in me, and so he mentored me into some other roles over there at Oracle. And so fast track years later, when I was at another crossroads after Sun Microsystems was purchased, because I was working over there with Jonathan Schwartz and the executive team there, they all said, you've been coaching us all along behind the scenes. Why don't you go put a stamp on what that is? So that's how I ended up at ITP.
And what was it about transpersonal psychology particularly that drew you to it?
Well, great question. I had been studying with another teacher with a women's consciousness group since 2000. So for 6 years, that doctor went to ITP, is where she got her doctorate in transpersonal psychology. So I had been steeped in everything from Jungian psychology to Tai Chi to a more transpersonal model, where I guess what people are calling it now is a holistic model, where you're looking at someone from the mind, the body, the spirit. Mm-hmm. I'll say faith or values. People get hung up on that little corner.
Oh,
sometimes.
absolutely, yes. First
And
mention
then
of
the
spirit, and
emotion.
everybody dives out the room.
Yeah, yeah, and it could
Well, a
be
lot of them do.
could be values. You know,
Yes.
values. I'm bringing that one to values and spirit and how those four play out. And so as a coach, I know, I mean, you're a very sophisticated coach. You've held space for me before, and thank you for that. And the subtleties that you're listening for is appreciated. And I think skilled coaches know that we are listening deeply on all of those layers to how we can help facilitate our clients to unlock another level of awareness and growth.
Okay, so
Paul, just before we continue the recording, that was an interesting perspective on coaching, I thought, because it's one of these, I don't know how you feel about it, but it's one of these disciplines that I think is often undervalued because it's so crowded. Don't know how you feel about that.
I think it is crowded, and I think it's misunderstood. You know, we'll still get, you know, as I talk to peers and colleagues, you know, you'll still hear the conversation that said, "Oh yes, I had someone ask me the other day, you know, oh, does coaching work?" And it's kind of like, interesting. Yes. And you know, the distinctions between, you know, the wringing of hands over the difference between coaching and counseling and mentoring, and, you know, what's what and what's not, and what should we do and what shouldn't we do. And, you know, the code of ethics is pretty clear for each of the major professional bodies.
Yes. Yes.
That sets that out clearly. I think it's invaluable. You know, I look at my own story of where I started out about 2007.
Yes.
Where I was, and sort of with life and career and all that good stuff, and where I am now. And it's, the coaching was an integral part of that process of shifting. And you know, I'm biased, so it's difficult to say don't do it. But what I would say is, and I posted on LinkedIn about this the other day. You know, if you're umming and ahhing, or you're kicking the tires, or you're not sure, or it's not held yes, then don't do it, because you're not ready. And it's a waste of your time and energy and frankly money. Yes. And that whoever you choose as a coach will sort of feel it's like a limp handshake. It's kind of like the handshake's there, but it feels a bit icky. Yes. It's better to wait. And when you are, you know, that old, it's an old joke. You know, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? You know, the answer is one, but the light bulb's got to change. Actually, given your other Glasgow Apollo show, there is another version of that, which is how many guitarists does it take to play a guitar solo? The answer is 10, 1 to do it, and 9 to go, oh, I could have done that.
Excellent. Yes.
So you know, there is a certain amount of, and then it comes down to what type of coaching do you want? You know, I mean, accountability coaching really is kind of going out the window now, because there's apps that'll do that for you. They'll send you a message. Did you do X, Y, Z? Yes or no?
Just ignore them.
Whereas if you're looking to make some real change is hard. Real behavior change is hard. And in an organizational setting, you know, the research says it's anywhere between 18 days and 254 days to do a behavioral change. And it takes 6 to 8 months for anyone else to notice it in a working environment. So you look at that and you go,
realistic.
That's you know, you require some support to do that, because you'll butt up against the wall. So that's my 2 pence worth. What do you think?
I think. I mean, I am, and I remain skeptical. About coaching. However, I have immensely benefited from 3 or 4, all of them old men who have helped mentor me over the years. So I say I'm skeptical, but I also believe that I've benefited greatly from having these people in my life. And regular viewers will have heard the stories. It might be worth us building on one of your other LinkedIn posts about happiness at work, because I don't agree with that model necessarily.
Neither do I. I don't think it's real.
Yeah, and I think it's more sophisticated, and I think that is probably what I'm guessing, because no one really knows. I mean, all the certainty in this area is nonsense. But I've got such a ongoing issue with people being certain that everything that they're doing works. But I think we should develop it. But let's get back to Bree. She's got a lovely voice.
Yes, I could listen to her all day. She's
really nice,
and is really smart with it too.
Yeah, so let's get back to you and Bree doing your interview.
So that's what took you into the yoga. That's what took you into the martial arts. Because didn't I read you were a qualified yoga instructor as well? And you just have this bow that has so many strings to it in terms of what you bring to a coaching relationship and to your life and to your friendships.
Aw, thank you, Paul. Thank you for noticing.
Of course,
it's my job. It started way before that. All of that started, I think, I came in that way. I mean, I was a 5 or 6 year old getting ready to go to school and excited about how I was going to learn about everything, nature, the body, all of it. And then I went to school and I very quickly realized, oh, this isn't the school. This isn't the school where I'm going to learn these things. So martial arts, I've studied 3 different styles of martial arts, and then also the root of Qigong, which is amazing. And anytime I walked into, in this case, a dojo, there was a feeling that I'd been there before. And oftentimes I was fast-tracked in a situation, and as someone who's very more comfortable behind the scenes, oftentimes I was my own worst nemesis, because as soon as they wanted to put the spotlight on me, I wanted to retreat. Yeah, so I was, I grew up, I was an athlete. I grew up basically on a farm. I mean, at any given time we had...
Whereabouts in the country was that?
Well, I started off in California, and spending a lot of time up in Lake Tahoe skiing and spending time out in nature. My family was very big on connecting us to all things nature. And then most of high school I spent down in South Florida, where we had horses. My parents at the time thought it would be fun if they raised Airedale Terriers for show. So at any given time, we had 60 dogs on the property. My brother, my 2 stepsisters, and, in that kind of situation, when the parents are traveling, you learn crisis management. When the horse is down, the horse is down the road, the dog is having puppies. You learn to work together. And what I really realized is those skills came in handy in tech, quite honestly, because we in high growth companies where you had to pivot and learn how to work together. I was also destined to be a veterinarian. I'll just put that out there too. That's probably a piece you don't know.
No, I didn't know that.
During that time, I was working for the local veterinarian, and his name was Dr. Livingston. I was his vet tech, and he was my mentor, and working with post-op, pre-op. And I didn't even apply to vet school. I was too intimidated at the time, because I heard that it was harder to get into than med school. So I took my math, science strengths and pointed them to engineering, because my father had a company that was the track that I was going to be on, which got segued when my brother passed, and then I met Mark Benioff. So then I got segued over to Oracle.
Okay, that's great. So I'm wondering, I can't wait, because I've got a rough idea of, we've spoken about your artifact, but what is your artifact and what's the story that goes with it?
Okay. Well, my artifact is a museum quality Tibetan tanka that was hand painted by the monks of the Gumed Tantric University, and the artifact itself is called, the tanka is called Thousand-Armed Chinray Z.
Thousand-Armed Chinray Z, yeah?
Thousand-Armed Chinray Z. And Thousand-Armed Chinray Z, as the story goes, is Avalokiteshvara, was in a way the right hand of Buddha, and he was on a mission to save all sentient beings, basically, and especially the Tibetan people. And he was sent down, as the story goes, he was sent down into the hungry ghost realm, the very dark realm, to liberate basically souls. So after some time, and it was, anybody who has descended into the shadow knows that it's not easy down there.
It's not a comfortable place, no.
It's not a comfortable place. That's what I've changed my mind about recently, is transformation isn't necessarily easy, but it's doable. So he comes out, he finished, so proud of himself, it practically killed him. And as he's catching his breath, he sees all the work that he had done. Some souls are starting to descend back into this hungry ghost realm. And he is so devastated by that, he begins to cry. And those two tears is where green Tara, the deity or the archetype for mercy from a feminine standpoint, and white Tara, the mother, show up basically to help him. And from that level of love, he was so overwhelmed he burst into 1,000 pieces.
Right. Oh dear.
and then Buddha came back around. I'm giving this some soft edges. He came over and basically supported the transformation, where now he has he's turned into 1,000-armed Chinrezi, and he has 1,000 arms now that listen and can see. And his mission still is saving all sentient beings of the 10 directions in 3 times, and it's the patron saint of Tibet. And the mantra associated with this artifact is Om Mani Padme Om, which liberates the delusions in the mind. So it's,
does that have a translation? or am I testing you now unfairly?
It's
loose.
I don't have it memorized, but it's very, very complex. But what I would say, and one of the reasons why that called to me when you mentioned an artifact, is because what he exudes is the ultimate compassion, and compassion is what's being sought after right now, to be cultivated, and empathy, and no mud, no lotus.
So that's, I love the fact that you've got what is essentially an original. In the art world, you have an original crafted by these monks, and I've seen it. It's absolutely beautiful. It must be fairly impressive in real life too. So I think compassion is an interesting topic because it's so misunderstood, and maybe we could sort of explore your perspective on the difference between compassion and empathy, and why those things are being called out now, you think, in terms of the narratives that are running in corporations and the narratives that people tend to run. What do you think? What do you think of those things?
This is a whole nother show, isn't it? That is such a big...
It can be, but let's have a starter for 10.
Right. So you probably are familiar with Adam Grant's work, yes?
I am, yes.
So in his book, Think Again, he presents the binary bias. And it's so interesting because I listen to Trevor Noah on occasion. I think he's pretty funny, and he's very wickedly intelligent. And I heard him being asked about a certain behavior of a certain person recently, and he said it depends on which side of the line you're on. If you're over here on this side of the line, the behavior seems normal, and if you're on this side of the line, the behavior seems ridiculous. And I think that some of my mentors have had discussions around diversity of thought actually is so valuable. So it's where classically collaboration, we're listening to the different points of view, and I think that people, or what I'm finding, in organizations, there are skilled people and there are people where those rubs happen. They're uncomfortable, and the conflict can turn into something that is undesirable, filled with anger, revenge, even guilt, depression. I mean, depression is astronomically on the rise behind the scenes. So when we cultivate compassion and empathy, we cultivate understanding. And when we cultivate understanding, we can shift over to curiosity, which is, what that person's saying feels like a fire going off in my body, but instead of feeding the fire of that person is wrong, I can sit with that and be curious of, I wonder what that person, what's going on over there? What's their story? And again, I'm so delighted with this show. I think stories will heal. I'm reading a book right now called Kitchen Table Wisdom by Raquel Naomi Remen. I don't know if you know her, but it's a compilation book. She's a doctor, and she's part of the noetic sciences here in the States. But the entire book is about stories and stories that heal. So I think that the more we can cultivate, the more we can actually share the stories. And I know there are a number of stories that I've been encouraged to share more openly and more publicly that I've resisted, because they're personal. They're personal stories of deep grief. I mean, when you're 19 years old and you walk in on your brother killing himself, that was a great lesson. And so from the outside world, it looked like Bree would be damaged. But truthfully, it was the greatest gift I was given in terms of moving from, the 4 stages of learning, the unconscious incompetence. You're 19 years old, you think you're going to live forever. and now you move to conscious incompetence, you realize life is fleeting. And to cultivate the compassion, not only for all sides, for the family members that don't know how to have been with their grief, so they just box it up and put it away.
Yeah.
Versus me, I think that's really the answer to your other question. I think I went deeper into, okay, my brother, who's basically like my best friend, he worked at Intel, he was a brilliant musician, he could go home and play a song he heard on the radio on 4 different instruments. I mean, he was larger than life for me. And I thought, okay, well, now I get to live not just for me, but also for him. And I think it accelerated my search and study of different faiths, different body disciplines, different healing modalities. And it's been pretty amazing.
I've got to pause it there again. Got to pause that. My goodness. That gave me goosebumps, Paul. Can't hear you. Have I muted you, or are you muted?
No, I muted myself.
Yeah.
Maisie kicked off in the background, so I wasn't sure if you'd hear it or not. Yeah, it's it hits home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And to everyone that still wonders why all this fuss about compassion.
Yeah.
I mean, what strength and power. I can't think of a superpower other than compassion to be able to go from that situation and say that's the greatest gift. But I've heard that before from other people that experience similar tragedy and disruption.
Yes.
Say, actually, where I am now, it is a gift, and you don't need that tragedy to give you that compassion.
No,
it drives me nuts when and I know I'm on a hobby horse when people say, "Oh, some compassion's a soft skill." It's like, no, it isn't.
It's unbelievable.
You have to be as strong as titanium
Yeah.
to to get to that place.
Yes.
So I don't know what you think, but
Well,
yeah, so
it's pure kryptonite to me. You know, I can't be doing with it. I've been saying for years, and I think I got it from Charlie Handy originally, but the soft skills are actually the really hard skills. There's never been any doubt in my mind about that. I mean, I think we devalued it. My political colours again. I think Thatcher and co helped us devalue a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I've spoken on the show before about how, you know, one of the worst jobs I ever did was closing down all the social clubs at British Gas, and suddenly there was thousands of people hated me, you know, and I was just doing my job. But I discovered it's because that was part of their lives. That's how we related to those people. It's how we showed that we cared for them. And there's a huge irony, because now the very discipline HR where I used to work is now going back to that agenda 30 years later. And of course, we don't have the skills anymore.
No.
So it's a crazy situation. It drives me nuts. And again, I think we could probably. But what I thought about Bree there, the reframe was beautiful. Just the instant reframe that she did. That it was a benefit to her. It was that I don't think I've ever heard somebody putting it quite as clearly as that before. So that was lovely. I must thank her for that, because that was something else. Oh, right. Let's go back.
Sure.
Get some more.
Turned into quite a remarkable woman, having experienced that, and I find that this, you know, we talked about post-traumatic growth and certain things being a gift, and I think it's an important story that people don't understand enough of yet, because as you've rightly pointed out, it's difficult to know how to talk about that. So you and I both know Erin Matlock and her story, which is an incredible one, and how her journey has followed a parallel path in terms of this understanding of life being fleeting, and, you know, addressing norms head on and exploring quicker and faster, because there's a certain urgency to it now. I'm wondering how you would encapsulate sort of the one or two lessons that you've taken away from your experience that you now look back on and go, ah, yes, I can see that, and how that might encourage others to look into their own mirror, for want of a term, to explore what growth might be on offer as a gift from that.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for asking, Paul. And I think it's a very personal journey. And my mom used to say, get in your own canoe, because I'm such a giver. She'd see me out of my ship drowning, helping others. I kind of didn't really learn another level of that one until she passed. But recently I've been saying what's been coming to me is run your own race. Run your own race. So there's so much out there that I think it's important to listen. We work with it at Inspired Science Coaching. We call it elegant listening. So elegant listening is listening on all those levels that we described earlier, with all your senses inside yourself and outside yourself. So sometimes that means listen to the wind, not just listen to the news, and be willing to empty so that you can hear what's the next best for you. And the next best step oftentimes could be, like, if I'm thinking of some of the clients I'm working with recently, and we're calling it, we were calling it the mastering the 10-minute break, but now we're calling it break mastery, because some people can take 10 minutes at the top of every hour, and then other people have to take 20 minutes, but whatever it is. And it's not take the break from the Monday through Friday. It's not take the break to do something else. It's actually to take the break, like Einstein urged, take the break, so that you put the work in, but that in a way, there's a rest ethic too, so that and there's science behind it, literally, that your brain can reconnect into the new pattern, because those 4 stages of learning, the unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence. So I'm a young child, I'm not even aware my parents are putting shoes on. Then I become aware, like, oh, someone's putting shoes on. Then we move over to conscious competence. We want to learn how to tie our shoes. And then if we do that enough, we move into the habit, which is unconscious competence. And as you know, at any point of those 4 stages, you have to leap. There has to be a leap of faith, because it's uncomfortable. You have to slow down.
Yep.
So I would say, I heard you say people are in a rush now to cultivate these qualities, and that might make it more challenging than it needs to be. So it's learning how to work with all the gears and really be with your story. That's where the ground of your story is, where the change and the transformation really happens.
I'd agree with that. I think what's interesting is I was working with a senior leadership team this week, and we were teaching them an exercise where they worked in a circle, and essentially we set up a number of patterns within the circle where everybody had to participate in a pattern. So it might be say someone's name, or move, or say a color, but the patterns started in different places in the circle. And what they learned was that they all had a part to play in that, but more importantly, that actually by slowing down and by listening to each other and by learning to ask for help, sort of, I'm not a visual person, or I'm an auditory person, so when I hear noise, I need something else to tell me when to move or when to respond. Just simply doing that simple exercise was so rich. And I've heard the other extreme, which is, well, if I slow down, that means I've got to sit with myself, and I'm not sure I want to do that because it's not very comfortable. I have to keep busy to keep moving, because otherwise I'll have to take a look in the mirror. So I'm with you. I've always found slowing down, and you'll know from your martial arts background, we always talk about, if you want power, relax. If you want speed, slow down, which is always an interesting concept to explain. In fact, I took a couple of bokken into the workshop, a couple of wooden swords to have them experience exactly that process.
I have one right there.
Do you?
I do.
I shall see you on the mat though one day. I can't see it because the blurred background, but we shall have to find a time to go on the mat with those, because they're great fun. But yeah, I think this idea of slowing down and understanding that there isn't a hack and there isn't an app and anything, it's all about the process. It's not about the outcome. These seems to be quite outlandish concepts to people embracing them for the first time, because we live in this hustle world, where if you don't hustle, somehow you're failing or you're not growing. And I would propose that the opposite is actually true. If you're hustling at the expense of everything, then you'll get to the end of your life, and then you'll have missed the view.
I couldn't agree with you more. And reading biographies is great, or again, sharing stories. Or studying other great leaders that you align with their values. I even think of Mark Benioff now. I listened to an interview that he had a year ago, and the way he built Salesforce, he has a foundation, they're giving back hospitals to the homeless, and now he's on I think it's plant 1 trillion trees. He's really out there advocating other CEOs to build in these systems into their organizations. And he's someone, when Thich Nhat Hanh had his stroke, he brought him over. So Thich Nhat Hanh and his whole band were at he speaks about this in the interview, that they were at his house so that Thich Nhat Hanh could get the best support from the hospital. that was right there, and he's been known to bring the monks and meditation into the Salesforce convention. I mean, I would say Larry Ellison back in 1989. He would go to Japan and during the cherry blossoms opening, and come back and kick his shoes off and get up on the table and meditate for a minute before he opened the meeting. I mean, one of the other leaders that I have worked for a big company, I mean, he was a 3rd-degree black belt, and you could see it, because if he came out of a very contentious buyout shareholder meeting, he could take 1 or 2 breaths and shift his state. Basically, we can shift our state with our breath and with training, letting go of the ruminating thoughts that we
why do you think it is we resist this idea that because I'm often asked by clients, and they go, Paul, have you got any quick wins? Have you got something quick I can do? And usually I'll say, breathe. And they go, oh, I haven't got time to do that. Well, where do you think that comes from?
Survival defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have it as human beings. And we all have it, and that's actually part of getting to know yourself, just like whether it's your Myers-Briggs or your hair color, your eye color, is like, once you get to know, not push away, but embrace the survival defense mechanism. I mean, one of them that will come up for me, that's part of my mechanism, is I'm not good enough, and shame. That's what Brene Brown's work has been really beneficial, because you get to turn and say, oh, sweetheart, that's actually not true about you. Mm-hmm. Or Thich Nhat Hanh will talk about the seeds in you can activate. If I have a thought and it's a negative thought, and I start ruminating that negative thought, and if I start talking about it, it can get really big, versus can I water, what's the opposite, pairs of opposites? What's the counterbalance? How can I water that? How can I water the opposite, so I think it's just, the world was flat before it was round.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, there's lots of consensus that we need to, there's almost like an unlearning process. Mm-hmm. Things that we've picked up, histories that, there's one version of history, but actually when you explore it, there's other versions of history too. You have to listen to not just the winner's side of history, but the loser's side of history as well. And that more and more of that's coming to light because of the greater transparency that the internet affords us, and the curiosity we have, and the willingness to question that kind of thing. So that's important. I also think the ability to hold and recognize tension, as you said, being depending on which side of the line you're actually on, sometimes that doesn't feel to be an issue, and on the other side of the line it is an issue. So it's kind of like, can you stand both sides of the line and see both perspectives, and then make a judgment and decide where it is you are going to stand and what you're going to stand for as part of your narrative and part of your story going forward, that grounds you into yourself, which is, I think, what you're saying, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. When you find that spot inside of yourself and you can relax into it and not, I mean, we all as humans, we have judgment and biases, but we can become aware and just relax. I think that's where compassion and empathy come in, that we don't know why that person is behaving that way or not. And the thing I've changed my mind on recently is that is that transformation can be very, very challenging. It can be hard work. It's not always hard, but it can be hard. And sometimes I'll even preface the clients with that some of this might feel uncomfortable, or if they come to me and something has become uncomfortable, I'm like, fantastic, and they're looking at me like, what? And I'm like, yes, that's the natural reaction because of where you are in those 4 stages of learning. So I think when we activate the intellect alongside of the emotions and the science, I mean, it used to be you couldn't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, now neuroplasticity is showing us, and again, our beautiful colleague Aaron Matlock that, or Jim Quick, you know, each, when you realize the science that each brain is unique as a snowflake, that piece of information right there gets me curious about, well, what's your story, Paul? What's Scott's story? Or any of those that you're bringing onto the show. And again, I'm delighted that there's a show dedicated to stewarding these stories of people that maybe aren't headliners. Everyone has a rich story to tell.
Oh, I think so. And the oral tradition was so important in the days, well, long ago. I think it's important to return to it. And I find it interesting when you go on retreat or you go on workshops where a component of that becomes storytelling, how enwrapped we become sitting in a circle around a fire, just listening. One of my favorite memories of storytelling was I was in Nebraska City. We've been to the Arboretum there, where they've got the apple trees and they make the cider, and they've got lots of hives and there's honey, and it's great. But in the evening, after we'd sort of done the tour and seen the facilities, the local Native Americans, they prepared this fire and these huge logs around it so that we could all sit them on. And it had gone dark, and they had taken us by torchlight. And I'm not talking battery torchlight. I'm talking fire on the end of a pole. They took us on a nature trek.
Nice.
And then we came back to a barbecue, and we sat around the fire in the dark. So you only had the firelight, and they told ghost stories, which was just spine tingling. And I think we miss this. We underestimate the value of tell us a story, tell us your favorite story, which, you know, that's a good place to go next. You know, one of the things we talked about is what is your favorite story that you'd like to share with? I'm sure you've got loads to choose from, but if push came to shove and I said, no, Bree, you're not leaving until you've told us your favorite story for today, what would that be?
Oh my gosh. There's so many stories. Okay, I'll just go with the one that's flashing. So as you know, there is a 40-acre piece of property up in the Sierra Nevada foothills that I've been going since 2000. It's right now it's summer season, but basically 2 professors and a Zen master, and it has, anyway, so it's land I've been going to for a very, very long time. I started as a student, and then I was invited to be a co-facilitator, and then eventually a facilitator. And I did not plan on this, trust me. So one of my favorite stories is last summer when everyone was the teachers were on vacation. I get called up to go up there and take care of the kitties in the garden, and I work from up there. I write, I research, I take calls. And I had always wanted to see the bears up there, but I hadn't seen the bears. It's almost like a wildlife preserve. There's everything you can imagine up there. Had never seen the bears. So anyway, one day, and I was told the bears were very active, and so to be very careful and lock all the windows and doors, which I'd never been told to do. So one day in the middle of the afternoon, I decided to do a yoga practice. So I did a yoga practice, and at the end of the yoga practice you go into savasana, where you're lying flat on your back and breathing, and you're integrating all the work. So I'm lying with my eyes closed about this far from the sliding glass door, and I hear this
oh, no.
And I thought for sure it was the cats, right? And so I'm laying flat in savasana. This is where the martial arts training comes in. I open my eyes, and a gigantic bear is on its hind legs that's bigger than the glass sliding door, trying to open the door. And I popped up like lightning and put my hands, up over my head and made a big noise, and the bear ran. And that encounter with nature like that, I mean, my heart was pumping. And listen,
I'll bet.
I'm calling the professor friends are like, well, maybe you shouldn't be up there, this, that, and the other thing. And if anything, I feel like I'm the Jane Goodall of bears. I'm like looking for the bear. and this and that. Well, sure enough, the next morning she came back with the baby.
Wow.
So a baby bear, and there's a picture of my grandmother on my mom's side with a bear, holding a bear in Alaska. Anyway, there's more to the bear story. But I went right up to the glass sliding window, and the mom was off the deck, but the baby was on the deck. And literally, the bear put its paw up onto the sliding glass door, and I actually caught myself going to open the door, like I was going to open the door, and so didn't do that. So that was good.
No, it's not a dog, Bree.
So fast forward, that mom bear is not around anymore, but that baby is grown now, and he's so polite and friendly. He doesn't come up on the decks. I have video footage of him and pictures of him. The other thing is the bears were notorious for breaking into vehicles and this and that, but after that encounter, when I went to leave, there was, and I have a picture of it, there's a perfectly placed paw print, bear paw print on the trunk, or on the roof of my on the hood of my car. So I know I had all kinds of great tech stories and leader stories and this and that, but that's the one that wanted to be shared today.
Well, I think that's a wonderful story, and I always think our encounters with nature, when they're so raw like that, are so precious, because it's one of the disconnects that we seem to have, that we need to get back to in terms of that. So, Bree, you've been really wonderful. If people wanted to find out more about you or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, I think LinkedIn is probably a great place. Bree L Luther, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and I think that's a wonderful place. Of course, I have some social media accounts. I'm not super active on those. We have an outdated website, so that is also the case. I do, although the website does have, I have a wonderful advisory team. So I have a wonderful, very diverse advisory team that have been mentors that often parachute into engagement calls when needed, with a very diverse background. So I would actually say going out to the website would be great to go check all of them out, because they're wonderful.
And what's the URL for that?
So I'll just put it in the chat box here. It's inspiredsc.com.
Right, so inspiredsc.com, and then it's /Bree-Luther, yeah?
For the LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, it's inspiredsc.com.
Yeah, it's the website.
Got it.
Yeah, you can get to all of us out there.
Fantastic. Bree, this has been a pleasure to reconnect to you, but in particular to hear your inspiring stories and very moving stories as well, and particularly how you have grown through that to where you are now. I'm delighted you've taken time to be with us, and I know Scott's going to love this when he gets to view it, and I know our audience is going to love it too. So thank you so much, Bree. It's been a pleasure having you on Artifact Live.
It's been my absolute delight to be here, and all the best. I look forward to all of your shows that you're producing. They're wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah, we shall have you back for sure.
Well, that was amazing. How good was that?
Yeah, I need to. She sent me the photo of the paw print. I remember it. And I wonder if it's in my photo library. I'll go and have a check, and if not, I'm sure she'd be kind enough to send it again. It's quite amazing.
Fantastic! I love the point when she said she was going to open the door.
Yeah,
because that's exactly what I would do. I know I would. Like, wolf, don't do that.
Yeah, it's not a dog.
No, good grief! What a lovely interview. Well done, mate. You did a good job there. That was excellent. Really
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much.
I thought the as you hinted in the interview, there was probably 6 or 7 areas that we could go into with Bree, or even just you and I, to talk about. I think the empathy as a superpower is actually something I use in one of my keynotes, because I totally agree with that. I mean, that is an absolute. We so need empathy. Empathy only extends as far as you can see. That sort of quote from Interstellar that, for me, just sums up what she's trying to do. She's trying to extend that line of sight.
Yeah, and I'm a bit of a Shinedown fan, and there's a lyric there's a lyric at the end that says, "We live in a world where empathy goes to die," and you just go,
"Oh God." Yeah.
I mean, it's a protest record, but and you go, yeah, we need to get this on the agenda. We need to help people understand it and what it is, what it isn't, why it matters, and what a difference it makes to people.
And people say rock music's all about drinking and women.
What, you mean it's not?
Well, that's how you and I got into it. Didn't do us any good.
No, absolutely not.
But well, that was extraordinary. And Bree, no doubt you'll watch this on replay. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. That was a lovely interview. And next time, Paul will switch on his camera.
No, Paul won't delete the file by accident. Sorry, Bree.
Terrible. So funny. So, well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, don't forget, we have all the previous 72 episodes over on YouTube, youtube.com/Scott McArthur. They're all there. There's some of them that we've done little summaries of. It's it's getting to be quite a rich source of storytelling wisdom. And I thought Bree responded to that beautifully within the interview, Paul. We might
very
use
generous
that.
and very kind.
It was lovely. And I think we do need to ask her if she'll come back on again, because I thought that was just lovely, really lovely.
Oh, I'm sure she'll do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Joe's just saying to us here, you need a whole video on compassion, Joe.
Yeah, well, I did a course a while back with the Compassion Institute over in Seattle. They're just steeped in it. It's fantastic. So I'll see if I can get Ali to come and be on the show and give us her spin and take on it.
Well, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? That would be absolutely amazing.
No, so if you're watching, Ali, I'm coming for you.
Excellent. So, well, next week we're doing something else. Another interview that you did for us. Who's joining us next week?
So we're going to be talking to John Techman. And John's a really, really interesting character. Huge experience. He's an author of a book called Ordinary Joe, which published by Borough Press. But prior to all that, and he's working at Surrey now. He teaches part-time at a postgraduate level and does some research. But he was formerly chief exec at the British Film Institute. He's got a huge passion for cricket, so any cricketers
can't be the perfect guest then.
But like Bree, he has some really rich stories to tell about his experiences of personal and professional life that, again, I think people are going to enjoy. So do come and join us for that one. John is he's also involved with the Arvin Foundation. So to all writers out there, John is certainly worth a listen and connecting with before and after the show.
Fantastic. I'll do an ad for the show tomorrow, Paul, so we can get it out there to people.
Good.
So,
and we have the video for that one as well.
Yay! I haven't downloaded it yet, so just wait to try and download it, mate.
I'll touch wood.
So, everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bree was lovely, and there was so much to take away from that. So, thanks again to Bree. My name is Scott McArthur.
And I'm Paul Crick.
We'll see you next week. Good
afternoon. Bye for now.